He shelters his 5 kids in a treehouse during a blizzard, but the truth he finds changes everything. Marcus Chen's hands were already bleeding when he realized the cabin door wouldn't open, frozen shut from the inside, and through the ice-crusted window, he could see why. His ex-wife Sarah lay motionless on the kitchen floor, and the carbon monoxide detector he'd installed last summer was nowhere in sight. The wind screamed through the Colorado mountains at 70 miles per hour, hurling ice crystals that felt like glass shards against his face. His 5 children, Emma, 12, the twins Jakob and Joshua, 9, little Aria, 6, and baby Micah, barely 18 months, huddled against him, their lips already showing the faint blue tinge that made his chest constrict with primal terror. "Dad, I can't feel my toes," Emma said, her voice breaking. Her thin frame shook violently despite the 3 layers of clothing she wore. Marcus's mind raced. The cabin was a death trap. The treehouse, the elaborate structure he'd built 2 summers ago, complete with insulated walls and a small wood-burning stove he'd installed as a fun camping feature, was their only option. It stood 30 yards away, across what had become a white hell of horizontal snow and ice. "We're going to the treehouse," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos in his mind. "Emma, you carry Micah inside your coat. Boys, hold hands. Aria, you stay between me and your sister. Nobody lets go. Nobody stops. Understand?" The children's eyes were wide with fear, but they nodded. Marcus had always been the parent who prepared for everything. The earthquake kits, the fire drills, the emergency plans Sarah had mocked as paranoid. Now that preparation was all that stood between his children and hypothermia. The journey across 30 yards took an eternity. The wind knocked Jakob off his feet twice. Marcus felt his son's small hand slip from his grip and lunged forward, catching the boy's hood just before he disappeared into the white void. His shoulder screamed in pain, an old injury from his construction days, but he didn't let go. When they finally reached the treehouse ladder, Marcus's hands were so numb he could barely grip the rungs. He pushed the children up one by one, their small boots slipping on ice-covered wood. Emma went first with Micah, the baby's terrified cries barely audible over the wind's roar. Then Aria, then the twins, and finally Marcus hauled himself up, his arms trembling with exhaustion and cold. Inside the treehouse, the temperature wasn't much better, maybe 20 degrees, but at least the wind couldn't reach them. Marcus's fingers fumbled with matches as he tried to light the wood stove. 1 match, 2, 3. On the 4th try, the kindling caught, and a tiny flame flickered to life. "Everybody close to the stove," he ordered. "Not too close. We need to warm up slowly." As the children huddled together, Marcus pulled out his phone. No signal. The blizzard had knocked out the cell tower, just like the weather service had warned. He should have left yesterday, should have picked up the kids and driven back to Denver before the storm hit. But Sarah had insisted it was her weekend, had threatened another custody battle if he interfered. The stove began to radiate heat, painfully slow but steady. Marcus peeled off the children's wet outer layers, hanging them on hooks he'd installed for camping gear. Emma's face was pale, her lips still bluish. The twins huddled together, their identical faces showing identical fear. Aria clung to his leg, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. Micah had stopped crying, which worried Marcus more than the screaming had. "Is Mommy okay?" Aria asked suddenly, her small voice cutting through the storm's howl. Marcus's jaw clenched. Through the treehouse's small window, he could barely make out the cabin's shape through the blizzard. Sarah was in there, alone, possibly dead from carbon monoxide poisoning. The rational part of his brain knew he should try to reach her, try to save her. But the father in him knew that leaving these children, even for 5 minutes, could mean coming back to find them frozen. "I don't know, sweetheart," he said, the honesty burning his throat. "But we're safe here. And that's what matters right now. Hours passed. The storm intensified, if that was even possible. The treehouse walls shook with each gust, and Marcus found himself checking the support beams every few minutes, calculating load weights and wind resistance. The structure held firm. He'd over-engineered it, thank God, had anchored it to the oak tree with enough bolts to support twice its weight. As the children finally began to warm up, their cheeks regaining color, Emma moved closer to him. Her eyes were old beyond her 12 years, filled with a knowledge no child should have. "The detector was on the counter," she whispered so the younger ones wouldn't hear. "Unplugged. I saw it yesterday." Marcus's blood ran cold, and it had nothing to do with the blizzard. "What?" "Mom's boyfriend," Emma continued, her voice barely audible. "Derek. He unplugged it because he said the beeping was annoying him when he smoked inside. Mom told him to plug it back in, but I don't think he did." The pieces clicked together in Marcus's mind with sickening clarity. Derek, Sarah's new boyfriend, the one who'd moved in 3 months ago. The one Marcus had concerns about but couldn't prove anything concrete. The detective work he'd been quietly doing, the background check that had revealed a history of domestic incidents, charges that had been dropped, restraining orders from previous girlfriends. "Emma, did Derek hurt your mom?" The girl's silence was answer enough. Her thin shoulders shook, and Marcus pulled her close, his mind reeling. He'd filed concerns with his lawyer, had documented everything, but the family court system moved slowly, too slowly. The storm raged on through the night. Marcus kept the stove fed, rationing the wood supply he'd stored in the treehouse's storage bench. He melted snow in a metal camping pot for water, made the children drink even when they didn't want to. He told stories, sang songs, did anything to keep them awake and alert. As dawn approached and the storm finally began to weaken, Marcus made his decision. "Emma, you're in charge. Keep the stove going. Keep everyone inside. Don't let anyone go down that ladder until I come back. Do you understand? Dad, no, I have to check on your mother," he said firmly. "And I need to know you can do this." Emma's face crumpled, but she nodded, her jaw set with determination that reminded him painfully of himself. Marcus descended the ladder into knee-deep snow. The wind had died to a moderate gale, the sun beginning to pierce the gray clouds. He trudged toward the cabin, each step a battle against the drifts. The front door still wouldn't budge. Marcus went around back, smashing through a window with his elbow. The glass cut through his jacket, but he barely felt it. He climbed inside, calling Sarah's name. She was still on the kitchen floor, but when he reached her, he felt a weak pulse. Alive. Barely. Her lips were cherry red, the telltale sign of carbon monoxide poisoning. Marcus dragged her toward the broken window, into the fresh air, starting CPR even as his arms screamed with exhaustion. After what felt like hours but was probably minutes, Sarah gasped, her eyes flying open. She looked at Marcus with confusion, then horror, then understanding. "The kids," she croaked. "Safe," he said. "In the treehouse. Emma told me about Derek, about the detector." Sarah's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm so sorry. I thought I could handle him. I thought—" "We'll deal with that later," Marcus said, helping her sit up. "Right now, we need to get you warm and call for help." As the morning sun finally broke through the clouds, Marcus managed to get a single bar of cell service. Emergency services were on their way. Delayed by the storm, but coming. He helped Sarah into warm clothes, made her drink water, kept her talking to prevent her from slipping into unconsciousness. When he finally returned to the treehouse, his 5 children were exactly as he'd left them. Safe, warm, alive. Emma had kept the stove going, had kept her siblings calm. She looked at him with questions in her eyes. "Your mom's alive," Marcus said, and watched the relief flood through all 5 small faces. "She's going to be okay." What he didn't say, what he couldn't say yet, was that everything had changed. That he'd be filing for emergency custody within hours. That he'd never again let his children spend a night in a situation he couldn't control. That the truth he'd found in that cabin, the unplugged detector, the negligence, the danger his ex-wife had allowed into their children's lives, meant a battle was coming. But for now, in this treehouse that had saved their lives, Marcus held his 5 children close and watched the storm clouds finally part, revealing a sky so blue it hurt to look at. They had survived the blizzard. Everything else he would face when the time came.